It was January 24th, 2026, at 2:47 a.m., when a dream so violent, so consuming, drove me to the cliffside garden overlooking the terraced vineyards of the valley below, and there, surrounded by ancient olive trees whose gnarled branches reached toward a sky ablaze with stars so bright they seemed to pulse with living fire, the air thick with the scent of rosemary and wild thyme growing between the weathered stones. Jesus appeared before me with tears streaming down his face and spoke words that shattered everything I thought I understood. Jonathan, before February ends, a protection will be sealed. Those who see this message, truly see it, have been marked by my Father, but most will scroll past their own salvation. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it, but you've been marked. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen with every fiber of your being. Before I continue, I'm asking you, please leave your prayer requests in the comments below. I read them, I pray over them, and if you're a true believer, someone who wants to go deeper than the shallow waters most Christians wade in, subscribe to this channel right now. This isn't entertainment. This isn't me promoting myself. I'm Jonathan Rumi. You might know me as the actor who portrays Jesus in The Chosen, but what happened to me on that cliffside 3 nights ago has nothing to do with acting and everything to do with a reality so urgent, so immediate, that I'm risking everything to share it with you. The temperature that night had dropped to near freezing. I could see my breath forming clouds in the darkness as I climbed the stone steps leading to the garden, each step worn smooth by centuries of pilgrims and workers who'd walked this path before me. I hadn't planned to be there. I'd been asleep in the small cottage I'd rented for a month of prayer and fasting, seeking God's direction for this year, when the dream came. In the dream, I saw a massive book, ancient, bound in leather that looked like it had survived fire, and an angel with eyes that burned like molten gold was writing names in it with furious speed. But then, the angel stopped. He looked up, directly at me, and said, "The marking period is closing. February is the seal. Tell them." Then I saw the book slam shut, and the sound of it was like thunder that shook me awake, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I knew I had to go to the garden. Don't ask me how I knew. I just knew. At 51 years old, living alone, no children to worry about, no wife to explain myself to, I've learned to recognize when God is calling me to move. So I threw on my jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and made my way up that ancient path in the middle of the night. The garden sits on a cliff edge, about 300 feet above the valley floor. During the day, you can see rows upon rows of terraced vineyards stretching out like green rivers flowing down the hillsides. Stone walls, some of them dating back to Roman times, hold the earth in place. But at night, at nearly 3 in the morning, it's a different world entirely. The darkness is so complete that the stars become overwhelming, not just points of light, but living presences. The Milky Way stretched across the sky like a river of diamonds, and I remember thinking how small I was, how insignificant. I walked to the edge of the garden, where a low stone wall is all that separates you from the drop. The wind was picking up, coming from the valley below, carrying with it the scent of earth and grapevines and something else, something I can only describe as ancient. My hands were shaking, and not just from the cold. I could feel something building in the atmosphere, like the pressure before a storm. That's when the light came. It wasn't gradual, it wasn't subtle. One moment I was standing in darkness, and the next, the entire garden was illuminated as if someone had turned on 1,000 spotlights, but the light wasn't harsh. It was warm, golden, alive. And in the center of that light, standing between 2 olive trees that had to be at least 500 years old, was Jesus. I've portrayed him for years. I've studied his face, his mannerisms, his words. I've prayed to him my entire life, but nothing prepared me for the reality of his presence. He was more solid, more real than anything I'd ever seen. The stones beneath my feet, the wall behind me, even my own hands, everything else seemed like a shadow compared to him. He was weeping. Tears ran down his face, catching the light, and each tear that fell to the ground seemed to make the very earth glow where it landed. He was wearing simple robes, and his feet were bare on the cold stone. But what struck me most were his eyes, filled with such a mixture of love and grief that I fell to my knees without thinking. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice was like nothing I can adequately describe. Imagine the deepest cello note combined with the clarity of a bell, with an undertone that resonated in your chest. "Do you know why you're here? I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. I just shook my head. He walked toward me, and with each step, the plants around him seemed to lean in his direction. the rosemary bushes, the wild thyme, even the ancient olive trees, all bending slightly, as if in worship. He knelt down in front of me, right there on the cold stone, and placed his hand on my shoulder. The warmth that radiated from his touch went through my jacket, through my shirt, straight into my bones. "I need you to tell them something," he said, "and most won't believe you. Most will mock you. But there are those who have been marked, chosen before the foundation of the world for this specific moment, and they will hear. They will recognize the truth because my Father has prepared their hearts." "Tell them what, Lord?" I finally managed to whisper. He stood and walked to the edge of the cliff, looking out over the dark valley. The wind picked up again, stronger now, whipping his robes around him. When he spoke, his voice carried over the wind, clear and powerful. "Before February ends, a sealing is taking place. Not everyone can see it, not everyone is meant to see it. But those who encounter this message, truly encounter it, have been marked for protection. What's coming requires preparation. What's coming requires those who are willing to be set apart." I stood on shaking legs and moved closer to him. Protection from what? He turned to face me, and the grief in his eyes deepened. "Jonathan, the church, my bride, has been lulled to sleep. They think they know what protection means. They think they're safe because they attend services, because they say the right prayers, because they've said a sinner's prayer once in their lives. But I'm telling you, I'm telling them through you, protection isn't automatic. It's not a blanket that covers everyone who calls themselves by my name." The wind suddenly died completely. The silence was so profound I could hear my own heartbeat. Jesus raised his hand, and the scene before us changed. The valley below, which had been dark, suddenly illuminated. But what I saw made my blood run cold. I saw churches, thousands of them, but they were empty. Not physically empty, but spiritually empty. People sat in pews, stood with raised hands, sang songs, but there was no light in them. They were going through motions, and above each church, I saw something that made me want to weep. I saw angels standing outside, unable to enter, their faces filled with sorrow. "Do you see?" Jesus asked. "Do you see what I see? They've locked me out while claiming to worship me. They've replaced relationship with ritual, intimacy with programs, my voice with their own preferences." Then the scene shifted. I saw individuals scattered across the world, and these people were different. They glowed with an inner light. Some were in their homes, on their knees in prayer. Some were in their cars, worshiping as they drove. Some were at work, but even in the midst of their daily tasks, they were connected to something beyond themselves. And above each of these people, I saw angels standing guard, massive beings with swords drawn, creating a perimeter of protection. "These are the marked ones," Jesus said softly. "These are the ones who will see your message and recognize it, not because you're special, Jonathan, but because I've prepared them to hear. They've been crying out for truth. They've been hungry for more than what the modern church offers them. They've been willing to be uncomfortable, to be set apart, to be called radical." I was trembling now, and not from the cold. "Lord, why me? Why are you showing me this?" He turned to me with such tenderness that fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. "Because you understand what it means to portray me without becoming me. You understand the difference between performance and presence. And because you're willing to look foolish for my sake. What I'm asking you to share will make people question you. They'll say you're using my name for views, for attention, for money. But you and I both know the truth." The scene before us shifted again, and this time I saw a calendar. The pages were flipping rapidly, and then they stopped on February. The entire month glowed with a golden light, and then I saw it. I saw a door, massive and ancient, and it was slowly beginning to close. "The marking period is closing," Jesus said, his voice urgent now. "Those who are meant to be sealed for what's coming must respond before this door closes. It's not about salvation. That door remains open to all who truly call on my name. This is about something different. This is about being set apart for protection, for purpose, for a specific calling in the days ahead." "What days?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What's coming?" He looked at me with such intensity that I had to fight the urge to look away. "Shaking, separation, the revealing of what's real and what's pretend. Jonathan, the comfortable Christianity that's been preached from most pulpits is about to be tested by fire, And those who have built their faith on convenience, on prosperity, on being blessed without being broken, they won't survive what's coming. But those who are marked, those who are sealed, those who are willing to be protected by walking in complete obedience, they will not only survive, they will thrive. They will be my light in the darkness. The wind picked up again, and with it came a sound. At first I thought it was the wind itself, but then I realized it was voices. Thousands, maybe millions of voices, all crying out. Some were crying for help, some were crying in worship, some were crying in despair. The sound was overwhelming, and I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't external, it was internal, resonating in my spirit. These are the prayers of the marked ones, Jesus said. These are the ones who have been crying out, asking why they feel different, why they don't fit in the modern church, why they're hungry for something more. They're scattered across the earth, feeling alone, feeling like they're crazy. But they're not alone. They're not crazy. They're mine, and I'm gathering them. He walked back to where I stood and placed both hands on my shoulders, looking directly into my eyes. Tell them this. If they're seeing this message, if something in their spirit is responding to these words, they've been marked. It's not random. It's not an algorithm. It's not chance. My Father has orchestrated this moment. But they must respond. They must act. They must choose to step into the protection I'm offering. How? I asked desperately. How do they respond? What do they do? Jesus smiled then, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. That's what I'm going to show you over the next 3 nights. Tonight was just the beginning. Tonight was just opening your eyes to see what I see. Tomorrow night, come back here, same time, and I'll show you more. The light began to fade. I reached out, not wanting him to go, not wanting this moment to end. Wait, Lord, wait, I have so many questions. He was already becoming translucent, the garden returning to darkness, but his voice remained clear and strong. Tomorrow night, Jonathan, tell them what you've seen. Tell them they're marked. Tell them time is short. Tell them February is the seal. And then he was gone. I stood there in the darkness, my heart pounding, my mind racing. The stars were still bright overhead, but they seemed dimmer now compared to the light I'd just witnessed. The cold hit me then, and I realized I was soaked with sweat despite the freezing temperature. My legs felt weak, and I had to sit down on the stone wall, my back to the cliff edge, trying to process what had just happened. The scent of rosemary and thyme was stronger now, as if the plants themselves had been awakened by his presence. I could hear the wind moving through the valley below, rustling through the dormant grapevines. An owl called out from somewhere in the darkness, and the sound seemed both ordinary and profound at the same time. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, the sky began to lighten in the east, the first hints of dawn touching the horizon. I made my way back down the stone steps to the cottage, my mind spinning with everything I'd seen, everything I'd heard. And now I'm telling you, if you're watching this, if you've made it this far, something in your spirit is responding. You're one of the marked ones. I don't say that lightly. I don't say that as manipulation. I say it because Jesus himself told me that those who are meant to see this will see it and they'll know. You've felt different, haven't you? You've felt like you don't quite fit in the modern church. You've been hungry for something deeper, something more real. You've been crying out for truth, even when that truth makes you uncomfortable. You've been willing to be set apart, even when it means being misunderstood. That's the mark. That's the sign. That's how you know. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to that garden. Jesus told me to return, and I'll share with you what he shows me next. But I need you to do something right now. I need you to make a decision. Are you going to dismiss this as the ramblings of an actor who's lost touch with reality? Or are you going to allow the possibility that God is speaking, that you've been marked, that there's a reason you're seeing this message right now? Leave a comment. Tell me you're marked. Tell me you're ready. Tell me you're willing to see this through, no matter where it leads. Because tomorrow night, the revelation goes deeper. Tomorrow night, Jesus promised to show me the scope of what's coming and why this protection is so crucial. The door is closing. February is the seal. And you've been marked. I barely slept after that first encounter. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those churches with the angels standing outside, unable to enter. I saw those individuals glowing with inner light, protected by warrior angels with drawn swords. I heard Jesus' voice echoing in my mind. February is the seal. The day of January 25th crawled by with agonizing slowness. I tried to pray, tried to read scripture, tried to prepare myself for whatever was coming that night, but I felt like a man standing on the shore watching a tsunami approach, aware that something massive was coming but utterly inadequate to meet it. I want to stop here and address something because I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking this sounds too dramatic, too convenient, too much like a script. I'm an actor. I understand the skepticism, but I'm 51 years old, and I've spent my entire adult life learning to distinguish between imagination and reality, between performance and genuine experience. What happened on that cliffside wasn't imagination. The weight of it, the terror and beauty of it, the way it's marked my soul, that's not something you can manufacture. And for those of you who are feeling that stirring in your spirit right now, that recognition, that sense of this is for me, that's the mark. That's how you know you're meant to see this. The comments from yesterday's video have been overwhelming. Thousands of you saying, I'm marked, sharing your own experiences of feeling different, of not fitting in, of hungering for something more. I've been praying over each one, and I'm telling you, Jesus was right. He's gathering his own. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're marked. As the sun set on January 25th, I felt the pull again, stronger this time. It was as if an invisible cord was attached to my chest, drawing me toward the cliffside garden. I left the cottage at 2:30 a.m., giving myself time to climb the path slowly, to prepare my heart. The night was different than the previous one. Warmer, for one thing. The temperature had risen to maybe 50 degrees, unusual for late January. But more than that, the atmosphere itself felt charged, like the air before lightning strikes. The stars were partially obscured by high, thin clouds that caught the moonlight and turned the sky into a silver canopy. As I climbed the stone steps, I noticed something I'd missed the night before. Growing between the stones, in cracks that seemed too small to support life, were tiny flowers. Even in the darkness, I could see them, white petals that seemed to glow with their own faint luminescence. I knelt down and touched one, and the petal was soft, impossibly delicate. How were they blooming in January? How are they surviving in these harsh conditions? They bloom because they're rooted in stone, a voice said behind me. I spun around, and there he was. Jesus. Standing on the path about 10 feet below me, his form radiating that same golden light, but softer tonight, less overwhelming. He was smiling, and the smile was both sad and proud at the same time. Lord, I breathed, and I felt tears spring to my eyes immediately. The reality of his presence hit me even harder than the night before, maybe because I'd spent all day half convinced I'd imagined it. He climbed the steps toward me, moving with easy grace, and gestured to the tiny flowers. These bloom in winter because they've learned to draw life from the rock. Their roots go deep into the cracks, finding moisture and minerals that surface plants miss. They're small, they're overlooked, but they survive when everything else dies. He looked at me intently. That's what the marked ones are like, Jonathan. They've learned to root themselves in me, the rock, rather than in the shallow soil of popular Christianity. They draw life from deep places. They bloom when everything around them is dormant. They're small in the world's eyes, overlooked, often dismissed, but they survive, they thrive, they endure. I stood, my legs still shaky, and followed him up the remaining steps into the garden. The olive trees seemed even more ancient tonight, their twisted trunks and branches creating shadows that danced in his light. The scent of rosemary was overwhelming, mixed with something else. Was that frankincense? Myrrh? I couldn't place it, but it was intoxicating, sacred. We walked to the cliff edge, and he stood looking out over the valley. The terraced vineyards below were visible in the moonlight, row upon row of carefully tended vines, each one supported by the stone walls that held the earth in place. The sight was breathtaking, the geometry of human cultivation working in harmony with the natural slope of the land. Do you see the terraces? Jesus asked, his voice quiet but clear. Do you understand what they represent? I looked at the vineyards, trying to see what he was showing me. They're a way to farm on a hillside? To prevent erosion? He nodded. Yes, but they're more than that. Each terrace is a level, a place of stability carved out of a slope that would otherwise be unusable. The walls hold back the earth. The walls create space for growth. Without the walls, without the structure, the soil would wash away and nothing could grow. He turned to face me, and his expression was serious. The marked ones are like these terraces, Jonathan. They're willing to be structured, to be contained, to have walls in their lives that hold back the chaos. The modern church preaches freedom without boundaries, grace without holiness, love without truth. But I'm telling you, true growth requires structure. True fruitfulness requires walls that hold back the flood of worldliness. The wind picked up, coming from the valley, and it carried with it the scent of earth and growing things. Jesus raised his hand, and suddenly the scene before us transformed. I could see the vineyards, but now they were alive with light. Each vine glowed, and I could see actually see the life flowing through them, from the roots, up through the trunk, out into the branches, and into the fruit. It was like watching blood flow through veins, except this was golden light, pulsing with vitality. This is what I see when I look at the marked ones, Jesus said. I see the life of my spirit flowing through them. I see connection. I see fruitfulness. But look closer. I focused on the vines, and then I saw it. Some of the vines were disconnected. They looked healthy on the outside, green leaves, even some fruit, but there was no light flowing through them. They were drawing life from somewhere else, from the soil maybe, from their own reserves, but not from the root. These are the ones who call themselves mine, but have severed the connection, Jesus said, and his voice was heavy with grief. They look alive. They produce what appears to be fruit, but it's not my fruit. It's not fruit that will last. And when the testing comes, when the heat intensifies, when the drought arrives, they'll wither, they'll die, because they're not truly connected to me. Then he showed me something that made my heart sink. I saw a wave coming, not water, but fire. It swept across the landscape, and the vines that were truly connected, the ones with light flowing through them, they survived. The fire passed over them, and they remained. But the disconnected ones, the ones that only appeared to be alive, they burned. They were consumed. And the terrifying thing was how many there were. For every vine that survived, 10 were consumed. No, I whispered. Lord, no. That can't be right. That can't be the ratio. He turned to me and tears were streaming down his face again. Jonathan, I take no pleasure in this, none. Every single one of those burning vines is someone I died for, someone I love, someone I've been calling to deeper connection. But they've chosen comfort over commitment. They've chosen entertainment over encounter. They've chosen the approval of people over the approval of their God. I felt sick. When? When is this coming? It's already begun, he said quietly. The fire is already burning, but most can't see it yet. It's burning in the spiritual realm first, separating the real from the false, the connected from the disconnected. But soon, very soon, it will manifest in the physical realm, and then everyone will see. He walked along the cliff edge, his hand trailing along the low stone wall. This is why the marking is so crucial. This is why February is the seal. Those who respond to this message, who take it seriously, who choose to deepen their connection to me, they're positioning themselves to survive what's coming, not because they're better than others, but because they're willing to be rooted in the rock. They're willing to have walls that hold back the chaos. They're willing to let me prune them, shape them, structure them. I followed him, my mind reeling. Lord, how do they do it? How do they deepen their connection? What are you asking of them? He stopped and faced me, placing his hands on my shoulders again. The warmth of his touch was like fire, but it didn't burn. It energized, it clarified, it strengthened. First, they must acknowledge the truth that most of what passes for Christianity in this age is shallow. It's entertainment, it's self-help with Bible verses, it's social club with worship music. I'm not in it. Oh, they use my name, they sing songs about me, they preach sermons that mention me, but I'm not there. I'm standing outside, knocking, waiting to be invited in. The scene shifted again, and I saw what he was describing. I saw massive church buildings, state-of-the-art facilities, thousands of people in attendance. The production value was incredible. Lights, sound, graphics, everything perfectly orchestrated. But as I watched, I saw Jesus standing in the parking lot, outside the building, knocking on the door, and no one heard him. They were too busy with the show. Then the scene shifted, and I saw a small group of people gathered in a living room. Maybe 15 people sitting in a circle, some on couches, some on the floor. There was no stage, no lights, no production. But in the center of that circle, Jesus sat. He was speaking, and they were listening, really listening. Some were weeping, some had their hands raised in worship, some were on their faces on the floor. And the presence of God in that room was so thick, so tangible, that I could feel it even in the vision. Do you see the difference? Jesus asked. Size doesn't matter to me. Production doesn't impress me. What I'm looking for is hunger. What I'm looking for is desperation. What I'm looking for is people who want me more than they want to be entertained, more than they want to be comfortable, more than they want to fit in. He released my shoulders and walked back toward the center of the garden, where the oldest olive tree stood. Its trunk was massive, probably 8 feet in diameter, twisted and gnarled with age. He placed his hand on the trunk, and the tree seemed to shudder as if responding to his touch. This tree is over 800 years old, he said. It's survived droughts, storms, wars, diseases. Do you know how it's survived? I shook my head. Deep roots, he said simply. Its roots go down over 30 feet, finding water sources that surface plants can't reach. And it's been pruned, Jonathan. Severely pruned. Look at the scars on the trunk. Each one represents a branch that was cut away. The tree didn't want to lose those branches. It hurt, but the pruning made it stronger, made it more fruitful, made it able to survive. He looked at me with such intensity that I felt like he was looking through me into the deepest parts of my soul. The marked ones must be willing to be pruned. They must be willing to let me cut away the branches that look good but don't produce fruit, relationships that pull them away from me, habits that seem harmless but drain their spiritual vitality, beliefs that make them comfortable but aren't rooted in truth, entertainment that numbs them, distractions that keep them shallow. I felt the weight of his words settling on me, and I knew he wasn't just talking to the viewers. He was talking to me. I thought about my own life, my own compromises, my own shallow places. Lord, I'm not qualified to share this message. I'm not some great spiritual giant. I struggle, I fail, I have my own shallow places. He smiled then, and it was the warmest, most compassionate smile I'd ever seen. Jonathan, that's exactly why I chose you. You understand that this isn't about perfection. It's about connection. You understand that it's not about having it all together. It's about being willing to be honest about where you're broken. The marked ones aren't perfect people. They're honest people. They're hungry people. They're desperate people. The wind picked up again, stronger now, and the clouds overhead began to move faster, creating shifting patterns of moonlight and shadow across the garden. The temperature was rising. I could feel it, and the air was becoming humid, heavy, like a storm was building. Jesus walked to the edge of the cliff again and spread his arms wide. Look at the scope of what I'm doing, he said, his voice rising above the wind. This isn't just about America. This isn't just about the Western Church. I'm marking people across the entire earth, in China, in Africa, in South America, in the Middle East, in Europe. Everywhere I'm gathering my own, the ones who are hungry, the ones who are desperate, the ones who are willing to be different. The scene before us transformed again, and I saw the earth from above, like looking down from space. And across the surface of the planet I saw lights, thousands, millions of lights, each one representing a marked individual. They were scattered everywhere, but as I watched, I saw them beginning to connect. Lines of light began to form between them, creating a network, a web of connection that spanned the globe. This is my true church, Jesus said, his voice filled with emotion. Not buildings, not denominations, not organizations, people, connected to me and to each other, rooted in the rock, willing to be structured by my word, hungry for my presence, and they're going to shine in the darkness that's coming. They're going to be my light when everything else goes dark. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and I saw lightning flash on the horizon. The storm was getting closer. Jesus turned to face me, and his expression was urgent now. Tomorrow night is the final night, he said. Tomorrow night I'll show you what happens to those who ignore this message, who dismiss this warning, who choose comfort over consecration. It won't be easy to see. It won't be comfortable to share, but it must be said. The marked ones need to understand what they're being protected from. They need to understand the stakes. The wind was whipping his robes now, and the olive trees were bending, their branches creaking. The storm was almost upon us, but Jesus stood unmoved, solid as the stone beneath our feet. Tell them this, he said, his voice cutting through the wind. Tell them that being marked isn't the end, it's the beginning. Tell them that responding to this message is just the first step. Tell them that I'm calling them to 30 days of consecration, 30 days of going deeper, 30 days of allowing me to prune and shape and structure them. Tell them that February is the seal, but the preparation starts now. What do they do? I shouted over the wind. What's the first step? Honesty, he said. Complete brutal honesty about the state of their connection to me. No more pretending, no more performing, no more hiding behind religious activity. I want them to ask themselves one question. Am I truly connected to Jesus, or am I just connected to Christianity? And I want them to be honest about the answer. Lightning struck somewhere in the valley below, close enough that I felt the electricity in the air. The thunder that followed was deafening. Jesus began to fade, his form becoming translucent in the flashing light. Tomorrow night, he called out. Same time, same place. Be ready, Jonathan. What I show you will break your heart, but it must be shared. And then he was gone, and I was alone in the garden as the storm broke. Rain began to fall, heavy drops that soaked through my jacket in seconds. But I stood there, rooted to the spot, letting the rain wash over me, my mind spinning with everything I'd seen. The walk back to the cottage was treacherous. The stone steps were slick with rain, and I had to move carefully to avoid falling. By the time I reached the door, I was drenched, shivering, exhausted, but I was also more alive than I'd ever felt, more certain, more convinced that what was happening was real, was urgent, was necessary. I'm sharing this with you now, and I can see the comments already flooding in. Some of you are marked. You know it, you feel it, you're ready to go deeper. Others are skeptical, dismissive, maybe even angry. That's okay. Jesus told me that would happen. This message isn't for everyone. It's for the marked ones. If you're still watching, if you've made it this far, ask yourself that question. Am I truly connected to Jesus, or am I just connected to Christianity? Be honest, brutally honest, because the fire is coming, and only those who are truly rooted in the rock will survive. Tomorrow night, I go back for the final encounter. Tomorrow night, Jesus promised to show me what happens to those who ignore this warning. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm terrified. But I'm also committed, because you, the marked ones, deserve to know the truth. Leave a comment. Tell me you're ready for the final revelation. Tell me you're willing to face the hard truth. Tell me you're committed to going deeper, no matter what it costs. The door is closing. February is the seal. The storm is coming. But for the marked ones, for those rooted in the rock, for those willing to be pruned and shaped and structured, there's protection, there's purpose, there's a future. Tomorrow night, I'll share the rest. I didn't sleep at all between the second and third night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that fire sweeping across the landscape, consuming the disconnected vines. I saw Jesus standing outside those massive church buildings, knocking, unheard. I saw the network of lights spreading across the earth, the marked ones connecting to each other and to Him. But more than the visions, it was the weight I felt. Have you ever carried something so heavy that it pressed down on your chest, making it hard to breathe? That's what January 26th felt like. I spent the day in prayer, in fasting, preparing myself for what Jesus had promised to show me. It will break your heart, He'd said, but it must be shared. The comments on the previous videos have been extraordinary. Tens of thousands of you identifying as marked, sharing your stories of feeling different, of not fitting in the modern church, of hungering for something deeper. But I've also seen the attacks, people calling me a false prophet, a manipulator, someone using Jesus' name for views and money. I expected that. Jesus warned me it would happen. But for those of you who are marked, who recognize the truth in these words, I want you to know, I see you. Jesus sees you. You're not alone. As January 26th wore on, the weather shifted dramatically. The storm from the previous night had passed, leaving everything clean and fresh, but by afternoon, a different kind of weather system was moving in. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an hour. The wind shifted, coming now from the north, cold and sharp. By evening, the sky was clear again, but it was the kind of clarity that comes with bitter cold. Every star razor sharp, the air so crisp it hurt to breathe. I left the cottage at 2:15 a.m. earlier than the previous nights. I needed time to prepare, time to steel myself for whatever was coming. The stone steps were still damp from the previous night's rain, and in the freezing temperature, patches of ice had formed in the shadows. I climbed carefully, using my flashlight to avoid the slick spots. The garden, when I reached it, was transformed. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and everything was covered in a thin layer of frost. The olive trees looked like they'd been dusted with diamond powder, each leaf outlined in ice crystals that caught the starlight. The rosemary and thyme were frosted over, and the tiny white flowers I'd noticed the night before, the ones blooming between the stones, were encased in ice, perfectly preserved, like they'd been frozen in time. I walked to the cliff edge and looked out over the valley. The terraced vineyards below were silver in the moonlight, the frost making them glow. My breath came out in clouds, and I could feel the cold seeping through my jacket, through my clothes, into my bones. I was shaking, and not just from the temperature. "Are you ready, Jonathan?" His voice came from behind me, and I turned. Jesus stood near the ancient olive tree, but he looked different tonight. The light emanating from him was brighter, more intense, almost harsh. His expression was grave, his eyes filled with a sorrow so deep it seemed bottomless. He wasn't wearing the simple robes from the previous nights. Tonight, he was dressed in white, brilliant white, and around his waist was a golden sash. His feet were bare on the frozen ground, but he seemed unaffected by the cold. "Lord," I said, my voice shaking, "I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm here." He nodded slowly. That's all I ask, that you're here, that you're willing. He gestured to the space beside him. Come, stand with me. What I'm about to show you is difficult, but the marked ones must understand. They must know what they're being protected from. They must know what's at stake. I walked to him on trembling legs, and when I stood beside him, he placed his hand on my shoulder. The warmth that radiated from his touch was like standing next to a furnace, driving back the cold, but it didn't make me comfortable. It made me more aware, more alert, more present. Look, he said, and he raised his other hand toward the valley. The scene before us shifted, and suddenly I wasn't looking at the terraced vineyards anymore. I was looking at a city, a massive, modern city with skyscrapers and highways and millions of people. It was dawn in the vision, the sun just beginning to rise, and the city was waking up. I could see people leaving their homes, getting in their cars, heading to work. Everything looked normal, ordinary, just another day. This is 6 months from now, Jesus said quietly. Watch. As I watched, I saw the sun rise higher, and then something changed. The light shifted. It wasn't the normal golden light of morning. It was harsher, more intense, almost white. And as that light touched the city, I saw people begin to react. Some of them, maybe 1 in 50, began to glow. Not dramatically, not obviously, but there was a subtle light around them, a shimmer in the air. These people stopped what they were doing. They looked up. They seemed to recognize that something had changed. And then, I saw it. Angels appeared beside them. Massive beings, warriors, with drawn swords, creating a perimeter of protection around each glowing individual. But the others, the vast majority, they didn't notice anything. They kept going about their day, oblivious to the shift that had occurred. They got in their cars, they went to their jobs, they scrolled on their phones, they lived their lives as if nothing had changed. Do you see? Jesus asked. Do you see the separation that's coming? The marked ones will recognize it, they'll feel it, they'll know that something fundamental has shifted, but the others, they'll be blind to it. They'll continue in their spiritual sleep, unaware that the protection has been lifted. Protection from what? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Jesus' grip on my shoulder tightened. Watch. The scene continued. Days passed in the vision. I could see the sun rising and setting, rising and setting. The marked ones, the glowing ones, they were changing. They were gathering together, forming communities, supporting each other. They were praying, worshiping, studying scripture with an intensity I'd never seen. The angels around them were constantly active, deflecting things I couldn't quite see, dark shadows, arrows of some kind, attacks from the spiritual realm. But the others, the unmarked ones, they were deteriorating. Not physically at first, but spiritually. I could see it in their eyes, in their expressions. A hardness was setting in, a coldness. They were becoming more angry, more divided, more fearful. And the churches, oh God, the churches, they were splitting apart. Arguments over doctrine, over politics, over leadership. People were leaving in droves, bitter and disillusioned. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. I saw some of those unmarked people, people who had been in church, who had called themselves Christians. I saw them turning, actively turning against the marked ones, reporting them, betraying them, persecuting them. No, I whispered. Lord, no. Christians wouldn't do that to other Christians. Jesus' voice was heavy with grief. Jonathan, it's happened before. It will happen again. When people have the form of godliness but deny its power, when they're connected to religion but not to me, when the pressure comes, they'll choose self-preservation over truth. They'll choose comfort over conviction. They'll choose the approval of the world over the approval of their God. The scene shifted again, and now I was looking at one of those massive church buildings I'd seen before, the ones with state-of-the-art facilities and thousands in attendance. But it was different now. The building was still full. The production was still impressive, but the atmosphere had changed. It was dark, oppressive. And on the stage, instead of preaching the gospel, the pastor was preaching something else. A message of unity at any cost, of tolerance that had no boundaries, of love that required no repentance. And the people were eating it up. They were applauding, they were agreeing, they were nodding along. But in the back of the room, I saw a small group of people, maybe 20 out of 2,000, and they were glowing. They were the marked ones. And as I watched, they stood up and walked out. They left. And as they left, I heard the rest of the congregation mocking them, calling them divisive, calling them judgmental, calling them hateful. "This is what's coming," Jesus said, and his voice was breaking. "A great falling away, a separation of the wheat from the chaff. Those who are truly mine will be forced to choose, stay in the comfortable, popular, accepted Christianity that has no power and no truth, or step out into the wilderness with me, where it's hard and lonely and costly, but where I am present." Tears were streaming down my face now. "How do we stop it? How do we prevent this?" He turned to face me, and the sorrow in his eyes was overwhelming. "You can't stop it, Jonathan. It's already in motion. It's been prophesied. It must happen. But you can warn people. You can give them a choice. You can tell them that there's still time, right now, in this moment, to choose connection over comfort, to choose me over the approval of people, to choose to be marked." The scene shifted one final time, and what I saw next will haunt me for the rest of my life. I saw the fire again, the one from the second night, but this time I saw it up close. It swept across the landscape, and it was consuming everything that wasn't rooted in the rock. Churches burned, not physical buildings, but spiritual structures. Ministries that had seemed so successful, so impressive, so anointed. They burned. Reputations burned. Platforms burned. Influence burned. And the people, God, the people, those who weren't marked, who weren't protected, who had built their faith on sand instead of rock, they were being shaken. Some were falling away entirely, renouncing their faith, declaring that God had failed them. Others were clinging desperately to the forms of religion, going through the motions, but there was no life in them. They were like the disconnected vines. They looked alive, but they were already dead. But the marked ones, they were standing firm. The fire passed over them, and they remained. Not because they were perfect, not because they were better, but because they were rooted, because they had deep roots that went down into the rock, because they had allowed Jesus to prune them, to shape them, to structure them with his truth. "This is what you're being protected from," Jesus said, his voice urgent now. "This is why the marking is so crucial. This is why February is the seal. I'm not trying to scare you into following me. I'm trying to prepare you for what's coming. I'm trying to give you a chance to root yourself deeply before the storm hits." The vision faded, and we were back in the frozen garden, the frost-covered olive trees surrounding us, the stars blazing overhead. Jesus released my shoulder and walked to the edge of the cliff. The wind had picked up again, and it was howling now, a mournful sound that seemed to echo the grief in his voice. "Do you know what breaks my heart the most?" he asked, not looking at me. "It's not the ones who openly reject me. It's not the atheists or the mockers or the persecutors. It's the ones who think they know me but don't. It's the ones who use my name but have never experienced my presence. It's the ones who are so close to real connection, but they settle for the shallow version because it's easier, because it's more comfortable, because it doesn't cost them anything." He turned back to me, and I saw that his face was wet with tears that caught the starlight. "Jonathan, I died for them. I gave everything for them, and they're treating my sacrifice like it's a ticket to heaven, a get-out-of-hell-free card, instead of an invitation into the most intimate, transformative relationship possible. They're settling for so much less than what I paid for them to have." I was weeping now, openly, the tears freezing on my cheeks in the bitter cold. "What do I tell them, Lord? What do I say to make them understand?" He walked back to me and took both of my hands in his. His hands were scarred. I could feel the rough tissue where the nails had been driven through. "Tell them the truth. Tell them that being marked isn't about being part of an exclusive club. It's not about being better than other Christians. It's about being willing to go deeper. It's about being willing to let me be Lord, not just Savior. It's about being willing to be uncomfortable, to be different, to be set apart." He squeezed my hands, and I felt power flow through his touch, not just warmth, but actual power, like electricity. But it didn't hurt. It strengthened, it clarified, it commissioned. "Tell them that they have until the end of February to respond. Not because I'm arbitrary, not because I'm playing games, but because that's the window that's been set. After that, the door closes. Not the door to salvation. That remains open to all who truly call on my name, but the door to this specific marking, this specific protection, this specific preparation for what's coming, that door closes." "What do they need to do?" I asked desperately. "Give me something practical. Give me something concrete they can act on." Jesus smiled then, and despite the tears still on his face, the smile was radiant. "Finally, you asked the right question. Here's what I'm calling the marked ones to do. 30 days of consecration, starting now, starting the moment they finish watching this video. He released my hands and began to pace, his bare feet leaving no prints in the frost. First, 30 minutes every day in my presence, not reading about me, not listening to sermons about me, not singing songs about me, actually in my presence, quiet, listening, waiting. Most Christians have never spent 30 consecutive minutes in silence before me. They're too uncomfortable with the quiet. They're too afraid of what they might hear. But the marked ones must learn to recognize my voice. The wind died down suddenly, and the silence was profound. In that silence, I could hear my own heartbeat, my own breathing, and something else, a sound like distant music, like voices singing in harmony, like the earth itself was worshiping. Second, Jesus continued, they must identify one thing, just one thing, that's keeping them shallow. Maybe it's a relationship that pulls them away from me. Maybe it's entertainment that numbs them. Maybe it's a habit that drains their spiritual vitality. Maybe it's unforgiveness they're clinging to. Maybe it's a belief that makes them comfortable but isn't rooted in my word. Whatever it is, they must identify it and cut it away. Pruning is painful, but it's necessary. He stopped pacing and looked directly at me. Third, they must find their people. The marked ones can't do this alone. They need community, real community, not just Sunday morning acquaintances. They need people who will pray with them, challenge them, encourage them, hold them accountable, tell them to look for others who are responding to this message, tell them to reach out in the comments, to connect, to form groups. I'm gathering my people and they need each other. And lightning flashed suddenly, though there were no clouds. It illuminated the entire valley below, and in that flash of light I saw something extraordinary. The terraced vineyards were glowing, each vine connected by threads of light, creating a network, a web of connection that pulsed with life. That's what I'm building, Jesus said, gesturing to the vision. A network of marked ones, connected to me and to each other, rooted deeply, structured by my truth, ready for what's coming. And Jonathan, it's going to be glorious. Yes, there's shaking coming. Yes, there's separation coming. Yes, there's fire coming. But for those who are prepared, for those who are marked, for those who are rooted, they're going to shine like stars in the darkness. They're going to be my light when everything else goes dark. The vision faded and we were back in the frozen garden. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. Dawn was coming. Jesus walked to the ancient olive tree and placed his hand on its trunk one more time. This tree has survived 800 years because it's rooted deeply and it's been pruned regularly, he said. That's the secret, Jonathan. Deep roots and regular pruning. That's what makes something endure. That's what makes something fruitful. That's what makes something able to survive the fire. He turned to face me one last time, and his expression was a mixture of sorrow and hope, grief and joy, warning and promise. Tell them I love them. Tell them I'm not trying to scare them, I'm trying to prepare them. Tell them that being marked is a gift, not a burden. Tell them that what I'm asking of them is hard, but it's worth it. Tell them that they're not alone. The light around him began to intensify, becoming almost too bright to look at. And tell them this, I'm coming back soon, sooner than most think, and when I return, I'm looking for a bride who's made herself ready, not a bride who's been entertained, not a bride who's been comfortable, a bride who's been transformed, a bride who's been marked, a bride who's been set apart. The light became blinding, and I had to shield my eyes. When I could see again, he was gone. The sun was rising over the valley, painting the frost-covered landscape in shades of gold and pink. The olive trees cast long shadows across the garden. The tiny white flowers between the stones were beginning to thaw, drops of water falling from their petals like tears. I stood there for a long time, watching the sun rise, feeling the temperature slowly increase as the day began. My mind was reeling with everything I'd seen, everything I'd heard. The weight of it was crushing, but at the same time, I felt a strange sense of hope. Because Jesus was right. There were marked ones out there, hungry ones, desperate ones, willing ones, and they were going to respond. I made my way back down the stone steps as the garden came to life around me. Birds were beginning to sing, the frost was melting, the world was waking up, but I knew that the world I was returning to was not the same world I'd left 3 nights ago. Something had shifted, something had changed, the marking had begun. Now I'm sharing this with you, and I know what you're feeling. Some of you are terrified. Some of you are overwhelmed. Some of you are thinking, I can't do this. This is too much. This is too hard. But I'm telling you, you can. Not in your own strength, but in His. Not in your own power, but in His. Not in your own wisdom, but in His. If you're marked, you know it. You've felt it throughout these 3 videos. Something in your spirit has been responding, recognizing, agreeing. That's not me. That's not manipulation. That's the Holy Spirit confirming truth in your heart. Tomorrow, I'll share the practical application, the specific steps for the 30-day consecration, the timeline, the urgency. But tonight, I need you to do something. I need you to make a decision. Are you in? Are you willing to be marked? Are you willing to go deeper? Are you willing to be uncomfortable, to be different, to be set apart? Leave a comment. Tell me you're marked. Tell me you're committed. Tell me you're ready for the 30-day challenge, because the door is closing. February is the seal, and what's coming requires preparation. The fire is coming. But for the marked ones, for those rooted in the rock, for those willing to be pruned and shaped and structured, there's protection, there's purpose, there's a future. Tomorrow, the final part. Tomorrow, the practical application. Tomorrow, the challenge begins. I'm writing this on January 27th, 2026, and I'm still shaking, not from cold this time, but from the weight of what I've been entrusted to share with you. The 3 nights on that cliffside garden have marked me, literally changed me, in ways I'm still processing. I keep going back to that frozen morning, watching the sun rise over the terraced vineyards, seeing those tiny white flowers thawing between the stones, and hearing Jesus' final words echoing in my spirit. Tell them I'm coming back soon. Tell them to make themselves ready. The response to the first 3 parts has been overwhelming. Over 200,000 comments from people identifying as marked, stories of hunger, of desperation, of not fitting in the modern church, stories of feeling different, of sensing that something more was available but not knowing how to access it. And yes, there have been attacks too, accusations of manipulation, of false prophecy, of using Jesus' name for personal gain. I expected that. Jesus warned me it would happen. But for those of you who are marked, who have watched all 3 parts, who have felt that stirring in your spirit, this final part is for you. This is where revelation becomes application. This is where vision becomes action. This is where the marking becomes visible through transformation. I went back to the garden yesterday afternoon, in daylight this time. I needed to see it without the supernatural overlay, needed to ground myself in the physical reality of the place where Jesus had met me. The stone steps were dry now, the frost completely melted. The olive trees looked ancient and weathered in the afternoon sun, their twisted trunks telling stories of centuries of survival. The terraced vineyards below were dormant, waiting for spring, but even in their dormancy, there was a sense of life waiting to burst forth. I sat on the low stone wall at the cliff edge, the same spot where Jesus had stood, and I looked out over the valley. In the natural light, without the visions, without the supernatural presence, it was just a beautiful landscape, peaceful, ordinary. But I knew what I'd seen there. I knew what had been revealed, and I knew that the ordinariness was an illusion. The spiritual realm was just as real, just as present, just as active as it had been in those midnight encounters. As I sat there, I felt the Lord speak to my heart, not audibly this time, but that clear, unmistakable inner voice that every believer who's learned to listen recognizes. He said, "Jonathan, the marked ones need more than information. They need activation. They need a clear path forward. They need to know exactly what I'm asking of them. So here it is. The 30-day consecration challenge, the practical application of everything Jesus revealed over those 3 nights. This isn't optional for the marked ones. This is the response He's requiring. This is how you position yourself for the protection, the preparation, the purpose He's offering. The 30-day consecration challenge starting today, right now, the moment you finish watching this video. You have 30 days to complete this challenge. That takes us to February 26th, 2026, 2 days before the end of February. 2 days before the door closes, 2 days before the seal is set. Here's what Jesus is asking of the marked ones. Daily requirement, number 1. 30 minutes in His presence. Every single day, for 30 consecutive days, you must spend 30 minutes in the presence of Jesus, not reading about Him, not listening to podcasts about Him, not watching videos about Him, not even these videos. Actually, in His presence. Here's how. Find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Turn off your phone. Turn off all distractions. Sit in silence. And wait. Just wait. For the first few days, maybe even the first week, it's going to be uncomfortable. Your mind is going to race. You're going to think of 1,000 things you need to do. You're going to feel like you're wasting time. You're going to want to quit. Don't quit. Push through the discomfort. Push through the noise in your head. Push through the restlessness. Because on the other side of that discomfort is something most Christians never experience: the actual presence of Jesus, not a feeling, not an emotion, not a spiritual high, his actual presence. You'll know when you've broken through because something shifts. The atmosphere changes, the noise in your head quiets, and you become aware that you're not alone, that he's there, that he's been there all along, waiting for you to be still enough to recognize him. During these 30 minutes, don't ask for anything. Don't present your prayer list. Don't beg for blessings. Just be with him. Listen, wait, let him speak. Let him show you things. Let him love you. Some days he'll speak clearly. Some days you'll just sense his presence. Some days you'll see visions or pictures. Some days nothing obvious will happen, but you'll leave different than when you came. Trust the process. All 30 days. No exceptions. No excuses. Daily requirement. Number 2. Identify and cut away. One thing. Jesus was clear about this. The marked ones must be willing to be pruned. Over the course of these 30 days, you need to identify the things in your life that are keeping you shallow, and you need to cut them away. I'm not talking about obvious sins. If you're living in blatant disobedience, that needs to stop immediately. I'm talking about the subtle things, the things that seem harmless but are actually draining your spiritual vitality. Here's how to identify them. During your 30 minutes in his presence, ask him this question: Lord, what in my life is keeping me from going deeper with you? Then listen, he'll show you. It might be a relationship that pulls you away from him. It might be entertainment that numbs you. Maybe it's the hours you spend scrolling social media or binge watching shows or playing video games. It might be a habit that seems innocent but is actually a form of escape. It might be unforgiveness you're clinging to. It might be a belief system that makes you comfortable but isn't rooted in Scripture. Whatever he shows you, cut it away. I know that sounds harsh. I know it sounds extreme. But Jesus was clear. Pruning is necessary for fruitfulness, and the marked ones must be willing to let go of anything that hinders their connection to him. For me, he showed me that I was using busyness as a form of avoidance. I was filling my schedule so full that I never had to be still, never had to face the deeper issues in my heart. So I've had to cut away commitments, say no to opportunities, create space. It's been uncomfortable, it's been costly, but it's been necessary. What is it for you? Be honest, be ruthless, cut it away. Daily requirement. Number 3. Find your people. The marked ones cannot do this alone. You need community, real community, not just Sunday morning acquaintances. You need people who are on the same journey, who are hungry for the same depth, who are willing to be uncomfortable together. Here's what I want you to do. In the comments below, identify yourself as marked and share your general location, city and state, or country if you're international. Then, look through the comments and find others near you. Reach out, connect, form groups. These groups don't need to be big. Jesus said where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, he's there. Meet weekly during these 30 days. Share what God is showing you during your 30 minutes of silence. Hold each other accountable. Pray for each other. Encourage each other when the pruning gets painful. And here's what's crucial. These groups need to be different from typical small groups. No curriculum, no study guides, no programs, just people, the Holy Spirit, and the Word. Come together and ask, what is Jesus saying to us? What is he showing us? How is he calling us to respond? Then listen, together, and obey what you hear. I know some of you are thinking, but I'm introverted. I don't like groups. I prefer to do this alone. I understand. I'm 51 years old, single, and I've spent most of my adult life comfortable with solitude. But Jesus was clear. The marked ones need each other. You're being woven into a network, a web of connection that spans the globe. You need your local expression of that network. Find your people. This week, don't wait. The biblical foundation. Some of you are wondering if this is biblical, if this aligns with Scripture, or if I'm just making things up. Let me be clear. Everything Jesus showed me on that cliffside aligns perfectly with his word. The concept of being marked, Ezekiel 9:4. Go throughout the city of Jerusalem and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it. The marked ones were protected from the judgment that followed. Revelation 7:3, do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Again, marking for protection, the concept of separation and falling away. 2 Thessalonians 2:3. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed. A great falling away is prophesied. Matthew 7:21-23. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Jesus himself warned that many who think they know him actually don't. The concept of deep roots and pruning, John 15:1-2. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. Pruning is biblical. It's necessary. It's how we become fruitful. The concept of consecration and being set apart, Romans 12:1-2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We're called to be different, to be set apart, to be transformed. Everything, Jesus showed me aligns with Scripture. This isn't new revelation. This is ancient truth that the modern church has forgotten or ignored because it's uncomfortable, because it's costly, because it requires more than showing up on Sunday morning. The urgency. Here's what you need to understand. Time is short, not in some vague, Jesus is coming back someday sense, but in a very specific, very immediate sense. The door closes at the end of February. That's 29 days from today. Why February? I don't know all the reasons, I just know what Jesus told me. February is the seal. Something shifts at the end of this month. A window closes, an opportunity passes, the marking period ends. Does that mean Jesus stops loving people after February? Of course not. Does it mean people can't come to salvation after February? Absolutely not. The door to salvation remains open to all who truly call on his name. But this specific marking, this specific protection, this specific preparation for what's coming, the window for that closes at the end of February. I know some of you are thinking, this sounds like manipulation. This sounds like creating false urgency to get people to respond. I understand the skepticism, but I'm telling you what Jesus told me. I'm sharing what I saw, and I'm trusting that the marked ones will recognize the truth because the Holy Spirit confirms it in their hearts. You have 29 days, starting today, starting right now. The cost. I need to be honest with you about something. This consecration challenge is going to cost you. It's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you comfort. It's going to cost you relationships. It's going to cost you the approval of people who don't understand. When you start spending 30 minutes every day in silence with Jesus, people are going to think you're extreme. When you start cutting away things that are keeping you shallow, people are going to think you're judgmental. When you start gathering with other marked ones, people are going to accuse you of being divisive, of thinking you're better than other Christians. Let them think what they want. Jesus was clear. The marked ones must be willing to be different, to be set apart, to be misunderstood. The comfortable Christianity that's been preached from most pulpits won't prepare you for what's coming. The shallow version won't sustain you when the fire hits. The entertainment-focused, blessing-obsessed, self-help with Bible verses version won't survive the shaking. But the deep version, the rooted version, the pruned version, the consecrated version, that will not only survive, it will thrive. That will shine in the darkness. That will be the light Jesus is looking for when he returns. So yes, it's going to cost you. But what you gain is worth infinitely more than what you lose. My personal commitment. I want to be vulnerable with you about something. I'm doing this challenge too. I'm not asking you to do something I'm not willing to do myself. Starting today, for the next 30 days, I'm committing to the same requirements. 30 minutes daily in his presence, identifying and cutting away the things that keep me shallow, and connecting with other marked ones. I'm 51 years old. I'm single. I don't have children. In many ways, my life is simpler than yours might be. I don't have to navigate a spouse who doesn't understand, or children who need my attention, or the complexity of family dynamics. But I have my own challenges. I have my own shallow places. I have my own things that need to be pruned, and I'm committing to this publicly in front of hundreds of thousands of you because I believe it's that important. I believe what Jesus showed me on that cliffside is real, is urgent, is necessary, and I'm willing to stake my reputation, my platform, my credibility on it. Will you join me? The practical timeline. Here's exactly what happens over the next 30 days. Today, January 27th through February 26th. Daily, 30 minutes in his presence. Daily, ask him what needs to be cut away, then obey. This week, find your people in the comments and connect weekly. Meet with your group to share, pray, encourage. February 26th. Complete your 30 days. Share your testimony in the comments. Commit to continuing the practices beyond the challenge. February 28th. The door closes, the seal is set, the marking period ends. What happens after February 28th? I don't know all the details, but Jesus was clear that something shifts, that a separation occurs, that the protection becomes visible in ways it isn't now. The call to action. Right now, I need you to make a decision, not tomorrow, not after you think about it, right now. Are you marked? Do you recognize yourself in everything I've shared over these 4 parts? Has something in your spirit been responding, confirming, agreeing? If yes, then here's what I need you to do. 1. Comment below. Write "I am marked" and share your location, city, state, or country. This isn't about pride or exclusivity. This is about identifying yourself so others can find you and connect with you. 2. Start today. Don't wait until tomorrow to begin your 30 minutes. Do it today, right after you finish watching this video. Find a quiet place, turn off your phone, and sit in his presence for 30 minutes. It's going to be uncomfortable. Do it anyway. 3. Find your people this week. Look through the comments, find others near you, and reach out. Form your group. Plan your first meeting. Don't do this alone. 4. Share this video. The marked ones are scattered across the earth. Some of them haven't seen these videos yet. Some of them are still feeling alone, still feeling crazy, still feeling like they don't fit. Share this so they can find their people. 5. Subscribe to this channel. Over the next 30 days, I'll be posting updates, encouragements, and teaching specifically for the marked ones. You need to stay connected to what God is doing in this community. The honest question. I want to ask you something, and I need you to be brutally honest with yourself. Why are you still watching? Why have you made it through all 4 parts, through over 9,000 words, through hours of content? Is it curiosity? Is it entertainment? Is it skepticism, watching to see if I'll say something you can use to discredit me? Or is it something deeper? Is it recognition? Is it hunger? Is it the Holy Spirit confirming in your heart that this is real, that this is for you, that you're marked? Be honest. Because if it's just curiosity or entertainment, you can stop watching now. This message isn't for you. But if it's that deeper thing, if it's recognition, if it's the Spirit confirming truth, then you have a responsibility to respond. The marked ones don't have the luxury of being passive consumers of spiritual content. The marked ones are called to be active participants in what God is doing. The marked ones must respond. The warning and the hope. I need to give you both, the warning and the hope, because Jesus gave me both. The warning, if you ignore this message, if you dismiss it, if you choose comfort over consecration, you're choosing to remain shallow. And when the fire comes, and it is coming, the shallow won't survive. You'll be shaken. You'll be exposed. You'll discover that what you thought was faith was actually just religious activity, and it won't sustain you when the testing comes. That's not a threat. That's not manipulation. That's just reality. Jesus showed me what happens to the disconnected vines when the fire sweeps through. I'm warning you because I love you, because He loves you, because there's still time to choose differently. But here's the hope. If you respond, if you commit to this consecration challenge, if you allow Jesus to root you deeply and prune you severely, you're positioning yourself not just to survive what's coming, but to thrive in it. You're positioning yourself to be His light in the darkness. You're positioning yourself to be part of the most significant move of God the earth has ever seen. The marked ones aren't just being protected from something, they're being prepared for something glorious, something powerful, something that will make everything you've sacrificed worth it. Jesus is coming back for a bride who's made herself ready, not a bride who's been entertained, not a bride who's been comfortable, a bride who's been transformed, a bride who's been marked, a bride who's been set apart. Do you want to be part of that bride? Then respond. Today, right now. The final image. I want to leave you with one final image from the cliffside garden. On that last morning, as the sun rose and the frost melted, I watched those tiny white flowers between the stones come back to life. They'd been frozen solid just hours before, encased in ice, and I'd thought they were dead. But as the warmth returned, as the ice melted, they lifted their petals toward the sun. They were alive. They'd survived. Jesus said they bloom in winter because they're rooted in stone, because they draw life from the rock. They're small, they're overlooked, but they survive when everything else dies. That's you. That's the marked ones. You're the flowers blooming between the stones. You're small in the world's eyes. You're overlooked. You're dismissed. But you're rooted in the rock, and you're going to survive. You're going to bloom. You're going to thrive. The terraced vineyards below that garden are dormant right now, waiting for spring, but the life is there, hidden in the roots, waiting to burst forth. That's what's happening in the marked ones. The life is there. The connection is there. And when the time comes, when the season shifts, you're going to burst forth with fruit that will feed multitudes. 29 days. That's all you have. 29 days to complete this challenge. 29 days before the door closes. 29 days before the seal is set. I'm marked. I'm committed. I'm all in. Are you? Comment below. Tell me you're marked. Tell me you're committed. Tell me you're ready. The fire is coming. But for the marked ones, for those rooted in the rock, for those willing to be pruned and shaped and consecrated, there's protection, there's purpose, there's a future, and there's hope. So much hope. February is the seal. The door is closing, but it's not closed yet. Respond. Today, right now. I'll see you in the comments. I'll see you in the 30-day journey. I'll see you on the other side of this consecration, transformed and ready for what's coming. You're marked, you're chosen, you're loved. Now go be still in his presence. Go let him prune you. Go find your people. The adventure begins today.